Welcome to Sports Circuits Part 2, The Squatter Man. To Shakespeare, the world was a stage. To natural philosophers of Newton's era, it was a mechanical clock. Physicists of the 19th century viewed reality more like a steam engine. Today, scientists regard nature as a computer. Through the works of people such as Gibson, we start to look at the world as a circuit board. It's undeniable in terms of the imagery how much the world looks like a circuit board, how it operates and its systems, the migration patterns, evidence for global programming, how the magnetic field of the Earth looks very similar to a hard drive, multiple dimensions, spontaneous disasters that can and will occur, as well as cycled disasters which take place every so often, like a system upgrade, reboot, etc. So we are mainly looking at the power generating facilities within the circuit board, and through the last video you could see the pattern and the grid that was found within stadiums, pitches, which is being used as an energy harvesting facility, which, just like in the films Monsters Inc., where when the children are scared and scream, their screams are harnessed and turned into energy, it's the exact same principle for the opposing teams cheering, roaring, screaming. That energy is captured through sound vibration and transferred into harnessed energy. In the last video we looked at kinetic energy. In this video I'll be briefly touching on the kinetic energy and also looking at sound generating devices which have the ability to change vibration into energy. Violetting out the last video, we had comments referring to Squatter Man and the pattern very much matching mine on the field, and a whole range of other symbolic representations such as the Holy Grail, the Scarab Beetle, the Spider, the Last Supper, just to name a few. Also, theatres and churches seem to play a role in either power generating or influencing people through song, chants, plays, etc. The similarities between the domes used in cathedrals, comparing to CERN and Tesla towers, also the hydrogen reactor behind CERN, how it compares to a UFC octagon. I'll be using David Lapoint's model of his primer fields to try to give you an idea of how this is functioning and how this not only works as a power generator on a small scale but on a micro and macro scale. It's not only a power generator but also the framework for the universal model of life itself, working all the way down to the cellular level to the universal level.
The discovery of the electric universe, the realization of the petroglyph record relating to plasmatic events, does not just change the mainstream outlook of the heavens, it also changes what we see and hear in messages from the ancient world. Their Squatterman style symbols stand testament to their effort to document and communicate a great happening, a happening that the modern world tried desperately to misunderstand. Over the past century and a half, archaeologists have unearthed huge libraries of archaic text, many of them describing great spectacles in the heavens and directly relating a connection all around the world. Modern research.
I'm not here to argue whether Squatter Man is an event that takes place in the sky that shows itself when a reset or some plasmic event is about to take place, or if it's something that's always present in the sky but only reveals itself at a particular time. The point I'm making is Squatter Man is a universal pattern for something much higher, a universal model for what we actually sit in, and something much larger. A model for the universe and life but also can be manipulated into a power generating or harvesting device. Similarly, if we were to put Squatterman over a spider or a scarab, again over the pitch, it matches quite well. The representation of a scarab and a spider could be hiding in its symbology and representation the Squatterman symbol, i.e. the primer field symbol, i.e. the pattern for life. What we're essentially looking at is two magnetic poles. And when we look at apocalyptic or reset events, these poles flip, which we won't talk about in this video. But in terms of a power generating device, we know that those poles create a massive influx of energy in the center. I showed you pictures of the Dogon tribes who use the Squatterman on their headrests. What other symbolic representations can you see? Holy Grail for one.
Cut Christian cross. On the other, the figure of what can only be a boy, certainly not an adult, dressed in a knee-length tunic. Not a crucified Christ nailed to a cross, but a youth, his arms outstretched in an attitude of blessing.
Can you see now how it's hidden everywhere? How all symbology is representing the same thing. He's representing the same field, he's representing the same power generating device, representing the same model for life. Look at Jesus Christ on the Last Supper. If we just take this and apply this same knowledge to that, does it not apply again? The Egyptian boats, when we look at the boats and how they curve at the two sides with the sun in the middle, what we need to do is start mirroring things as they've done, mirroring and turning and rotating objects. If you were to mirror the Egyptian boat, again, it creates the Squatterman, it creates the generator, it creates the primer field. So we come on to theatres, cathedrals and temples, and at this point I just want to make a point about how all sporting events mostly take place on a weekend, and also you visit a church, temple, cathedrals, that mostly takes place on a Sunday, on a weekend also. If you've watched my other video about words as spells, we know that the weekend is the weekend. Ultimately the days that you're not working and you're not a slave. You go to sport circuits and pitches for your energy to be harnessed in another way. You have got no free days. Churches and cathedrals would be the same, but I see them mostly as influence devices. This is not a new thing. If we look at the past, amphitheatres and colosseums were doing similar things. Colosseums being power generating devices, power harnessing devices, and amphitheatres being energy harnessing devices or influencing devices. I imagine theatres working in a similar way to this, harnessing or influencing through one of the two poles. As theatres and churches are slightly different to sports circuits, as there's the two opposing the home and the away teams in a sports field, whereas within a theatre or a church, or mostly people are on the same wavelength, are on the same frequency, are on the same force to say. When we start to look at the top of theatre ceilings, we start to see the domes. Domes again being very similar to CERN and the dome at CERN. And then when we look at David Lapoint's model, we can see what CERN actually is.
In reviewing a video from CERN, I noticed something quite bizarre, and it wasn't in the data from the collisions. It was in the shape of CERN's most well-recognized building, the Globe of Science and Innovation in Geneva, Switzerland. Not only was it a bowl shape, but the design of the building also had a hole in the top of the dome, exactly as my theory would call for. So I made a magnetic scale model of the CERN dome, placed a set of them in my vacuum chamber, and fired it up. Not only did these CERN bowls form a spherical shape at the center of the reaction, but they also formed a disk of plasma around the nucleus, as well as ejection jets along the axis.
And then how similar that is to the Tesla Tower. Coming back to all the cathedrals and temples and all of their domes and what they're truly doing and representing. It's not just a representation, they are actually generating. This is also shown in cathedral and church windows. The same pattern. Another point I want to make is the ceremonies that take place in churches and cathedrals on a weekly basis, the type of rituals. You also see this in sporting events such as American football and football in the UK, as before a match you have some sort of ceremony or some sort of performance that is taken place before the match begins. Also thinking about concerts and music. Now this goes back a long way, but just look back a little bit to the Beatles and Elvis, how girls were screaming and fainting at Elvis Presley and the Beatles, and up until today you still get it with One Direction, and you get people doing it with everybody, all the rappers, everybody screaming. Now just think of that scream for a second in relation to what we said earlier.
You're going in there because we need this. Our city is counting on you to collect those children's screams. Without scream, we have no power.
One of the great things about vibrations is they're kind of everywhere. So everything from sound to atoms vibrating, to cars going by, to walking, to your clothes moving, and we can take those vibrations and we can convert them into electrical energy. So we make these little nanogenerators. This is an example of the kind of device that we make, and effectively what they are is an array of zinc oxide nanorods, which looks a little bit like a very, very small hairbrush. When we flex it and bend it, we can generate electricity. Looking into a variety of different answers to the problem of the energy challenge in the world is important.
Do you see now how sound can be harnessed into energy, and how the sound in the football stadiums, concerts and church are being harnessed as energy? I also came across this video, and it was just the diagrams and the way they were presenting it I found very interesting. Just think about this in relation to what we've been speaking about.
The Amsterdam Arena, an iconic venue for large-scale events. To ensure an amazing, seamless fan experience, the Amsterdam Arena was looking for a sustainable solution to their energy needs, one that would reduce CO2 emissions and generate value by providing grid services. The Amsterdam Arena and the Mobility House chose the Eaton Nissan X-Storage building system with a power of 4 megawatts and a storage capacity of 4 megawatt-hour. The storage system will make the energy supply of the Amsterdam Arena more efficient, sustainable and reliable through additional backup power, peak shaving during periods of high demand, and grid stabilization services. The Eaton Nissan X storage buildings system stores energy from the grid during low demand periods and supplies sustainable power when there's an outage, replacing diesel generators. It also supports the arena during football matches and concerts when its energy consumption can peak. This significantly reduces the maximum load on the public grid and local distribution. The setup at the stadium includes 9 Eaton bidirectional inverters, 119 racks and 1,160 battery packs using certified Second Life Nissan Leaf battery modules. Each inverter is connected to arrays of battery racks adapted to the system configuration. The Mobility House leverages the energy storage system. They perform frequency regulation by charging or discharging batteries based on grid operator requests, strengthening local grid stability while generating additional value for the Amsterdam Arena. The Amsterdam Arena X storage buildings solution efficiently stores and distributes energy where it's needed, ensuring matches and concerts continue uninterrupted, powering the neighborhood when necessary, and protecting the grid while reducing CO2 emissions.
In relation to the whole energy harvesting theory I'm putting forward, we ourselves are batteries. We ourselves have great power. If you look back at the Jed battery, which was in ancient Egypt, represented stability and also was a great power source. Also equates to our spinal column, and rising the power up, known as rising the consciousness or rising the Kundalini energy. And when done so, we become a master of ourselves and ultimately a Jedi, which I believe is the key word in Jed battery, the Jedi. We are Jedi. And the masters of the universe, aka the elite, have enslaved us and we have forgotten what we are. The whole model which we are presented within, they have manipulated and trying to keep us here, keep us trapped through the manipulation and lost of ourselves. Due to celebrities and music and evils in the world, we are losing ourselves and our moral value. The easiest way to escape this trap is to find yourself and gain your power back. Some final thoughts about the pitch and the pattern that I found before I leave you with some of David Lapoint's clips, just to give you an idea of the model and what I'm talking about, to give you a better understanding of everything for me. The blue and the red came to me spontaneously. You know, I was looking more in depth into the stadiums themselves. People have found stadiums and theatres and they see the importance of them, but no one's looked down in them and saw the patterns and the shapes that they're looking at. So once I started to do that, it was almost like a voice spoke to me, gave me the pattern and told me that one side was blue, one side was red, one side was one force, one side was the other. This was shown to me. And the more I think about the blue and the red, and the more that you see it represented throughout politics and media, marketing, it's very significant. The blue and the red dragon, the 2 dragons in China. The force that we're talking about is the same force that creates life between a man and a woman. The man's penis acting as one pole and the woman's vagina acting as another pole. The male and female energy, when combined, create the middle spark, the third, which creates life. You know, the pattern can be represented in numerous ways, just so you know as well, for people that see in the overlapping circles, triangles facing the other way, you know, even down to letters and symbols. A V could represent one half of the force, or a W representing the 2 V's, 2 forces, and M upside down, the double V. A V could represent one side of the hourglass-like shape. An X representing the middle. On the other hand, you've also got K and A. You know, to be honest, I see every letter and number as some kind of importance and fitting into the shapings. E and G, P and Q all represent 6 in rotation for me as well. You know, when we look at the 2 towers in mythology and all throughout history, the 2 towers, the twin towers, the 2 towers, it's representing one of the 2 energy forces. and the 2 create the 3, and that's the reason why the 3 is so important. But if you take it up the scale, and within the 3, a 4 and the 5th create the 6th, and within the 6th, the 7th, 8th create the 9th, then you've got the Tesla's 3, 6, 9, and then themselves will create your holy trinity of 3. And I feel this is why we see 3 as often as 6 and 9 in all the names and logos and all the ways to represent the same things. 3, 6 and 9 also fit into the hourglass pattern too. 2 3s facing each other would make it an hourglass-like shape. It would make it an 8, ultimately the pattern, and it would also highlight the importance of 33. And then you've got 69 and 96 overlaid on top of one another would also make the same 8 or the same pattern. You know, going back to the 2 towers, even think of an electric plug socket in America with the 2 pins, the 2 points, the 2 towers, the red and the blue. You know, there's so much at this point, it's so deep. You know, as I've already shown, you've got the cross representing the meeting of these 2 forces. And you know, often on the Celtic crosses where you've got the spiraling, this is what it's showing you, what I've showed you on the football field. The vortex is the energy. So we have life itself imaging down and copying itself on every kind of scale you can think of. But ultimately what we're trying to highlight here is this can be manipulated, and it is, and it's being used to harvest energy. So from these findings, it's made me realise that, you know, I'm definitely onto something here. So part 2, but part 3 will soon be coming. Thank you, people, and I hope you enjoy David's work.
The fields shown around the green photon are electromagnetic fields of opposite polarity, with the red field being of north magnetic orientation and the blue field being of south magnetic orientation. It will be proven that this is actually the way that magnetic fields are structured around all matter. This applies from the smallest particles we have discovered to the largest structures in space. If you were to measure these fields with a compass, their magnetic fields would appear identical to the magnetic fields of a bar magnet. This also means that when we measured the magnetic fields of matter with other methods in the lab, we also assumed that matter had a bar magnet type of magnetic field. But this assumption was a mistake. So until now, we have incorrectly assumed that electrons and other matter have a magnetic field shape as shown in this drawing. But we must realize that the fields around an electron, as well as around all other matter, are actually 2 opposing bowl-shaped electromagnetic fields. Unless we properly understand this basic magnetic field structure, we will never be able to properly understand the fundamental forces of matter from the subatomic to the galactic. I believe that this magnetic field structure is an intrinsic property of all matter. Therefore, you cannot have a particle of matter unless these magnetic fields are there to form it and confine it. To further understand these magnetic fields and validate this new theory, hundreds of experiments were conducted utilizing a vacuum chamber and specially constructed bowl-shaped magnetic field emitters. When 70,000 volts of electricity is applied, the plasma formations that you are now seeing appear. A variety of purging gases were used in these experiments. This includes ordinary air, argon, hydrogen, and helium. The spacing and orientation of the magnetic field emitters were varied in many ways as well. The magnetic field emitters were suspended on non-conductive, high-strength microfilament line attached to magnetic supports on the inner surface of the vacuum chamber. Then, to hold these supports in place, high-strength magnets were utilized on the outer surface of the vacuum chamber. This arrangement allows for the adjustment of the magnetic field emitters while the experiment is running. A variety of bowl-shaped magnetic field emitters were utilized in these experiments in order to reveal how changing the geometry of the field emitters affects the matter around them. As you can clearly see here, a change of magnetic field emitter geometry also results in a change in the shape of the plasma formation within the vacuum chamber. By adjusting the exposure settings on the camera, an X-shaped pattern is revealed between the magnetic field emitters that is amazingly similar to the shape of the Red Square Nebula. You can even see the bowl shape of the magnetic fields in the Red Square Nebula. Notice how increasing the spacing between the magnetic field emitters transforms the shape of the nucleus until finally a disk of plasma forms around the nucleus. Also notice the rapid spin of the plasma around the magnetic field emitters, even though the field emitters are stationary. Here you can clearly see how even a single magnetic field emitter controls the shape of the plasma around it. Notice how it confines the plasma to the lower part of the vacuum chamber. From the structures in space to the structures of matter revealed in the collisions at the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, all sources of data were considered. I carefully studied the amazing research underway at the Large Hadron Collider, and I found a wealth of evidence for this new theory in the collisions there. In reviewing a video from CERN, I noticed something quite bizarre, and it wasn't in the data from the collisions. It was in the shape of CERN's most well-recognized building, the Globe of Science and Innovation in Geneva, Switzerland. Not only was it a bowl shape, but the design of the building also had a hole in the top of the dome, exactly as my theory would call for. So I made a magnetic scale model of the CERN dome, placed a set of them in my vacuum chamber, and fired it up. Not only did these CERN bowls form a spherical shape at the center of the reaction, but they also formed a disk of plasma around the nucleus, as well as ejection jets along the axis. The pattern has been there for centuries at the Pantheon in Rome, which has been referred to as the Vault of the Heavens. Then the required shape was also found at St. Peter's Basilica. Then one of my favorites was found at St. Paul's Cathedral in Medina, Malta. Notice the angels circling the hole at the top of the dome, and compare that to the glowing ring that is found inside the bowl-shaped magnetic field emitters in the vacuum chamber. Why are these angels on fire exactly where they should be? Much more on this dome and the others later in this series of videos. So it seems that people often want a sign from God that we are not alone. Sometimes God does give us a sign if we just pay attention. Sometimes He even puts that sign up over the Capitol of the United States of America. Then we will take a look at Newgrange in Ireland. This structure predates Stonehenge by over 200 years, and yet it too contains unbelievable details related to this new theory of the structure of all matter. More on Newgrange later in this video series. You will clearly see how this new theory explains the structure of not only the Sun, but also all matter, from electrons, to atoms, to molecules, to planets, to stars, to nebula, and even to entire galaxies. Then we will take a look at how these bowl-shaped magnetic field emitters cause both magnetized and non-magnetized balls to form the amazing arrays shown here. Shown here are ordinary non-magnetized 5mm steel balls. These bowl-shaped magnetic fields induce a magnetic field into each steel ball, which causes them to repel each other while at the same time keeping the balls structured together. So this mysterious force not only causes the steel balls to become packed tightly together, but it also keeps them apart. Then it does this while at the same time forming a geometrically balanced pattern, just as we find within atoms and molecules. Notice the vibration in all of the steel balls as each new ball is added to the nucleus area. What we see at work here is what I believe would truly be defined as the strong force. Pouring 2mm steel balls into the large bowls reveal the true forces at work in the Southern Crab Nebula. A wide variety of methods were used to study the magnetic fields emanating from these bowls. Here we see ferrofluid at work, showing the magnetic patterns formed within these bowl-shaped magnetic field emitters. So you should be starting to understand that a critical mistake was made by scientists when it was assumed that the magnetic fields emanating from matter such as atoms was due to a simple bar-shaped magnetic field within the atom. This assumption led to many ill-formed ideas as to the true forces at work, from the subatomic level to the galactic level. Correct this one basic misunderstanding, and then many difficult problems in science become very clear and easy to understand. Here we see iron filings revealing the magnetic field lines around a bar magnet. Now we see a compass being used to reveal the magnetic field around the bowl-shaped emitter set. Notice that the field emitted from both the bowls and the bar magnet are the same. No wonder mankind was unaware of these bowl-shaped magnetic fields. They were hiding right in front of us the whole time. In this image, the magnetic field lines around the typical structure of an atom, a star, or even a galaxy are shown in magenta. But we need to remember that even though the magnetic field lines measured around matter are of this shape, it is not due to a bar-shaped magnet along the axis of the matter being measured. There are in reality dual bowl-shaped magnetic fields around the nucleus that cause this measured shape of magnetic field lines. So here is the basic shape of the magnetic fields that emanate from a typical structure in space. Now let's examine some structures in space and see if we can't find evidence for this shape at work in galactic formations. Here is how we were mistaken in our understanding of the true forces at work in galactic structures. These large structures in space could not be explained by the currently accepted theory of gravity alone. So as we studied these structures, it was assumed that some extra source of gravity was required to explain how all this matter could be held in orbit around the central star in these galaxies. This is how the theory of black holes became accepted when trying to explain these structures. It was a totally reasonable line of thinking. But it was found that even using black holes with incredible gravity, we could still not explain how these large structures in space are held together and function. So the next mistake that we made was to assume that some other extra matter was there to explain these large structures in space. Along came our theory of dark matter. But even when we applied both the theory of black holes and dark matter to our puzzle, there still were some problems. It seems the universe itself was not only expanding, but that rate of expansion was increasing. To explain this, we came up with the theory of dark energy. So now we have invented three totally unproven theories to explain what we find in the visible and known matter in space: black holes, dark matter, and dark energy. But they are not required at all if you eliminate the basic misunderstanding of magnetic fields around the nucleus of all structures in space. Once you properly understand this revolutionary theory of how magnetic fields can cause not only plasma, but actual matter to form the structures we find in space, you will clearly see that black holes, dark matter, and dark energy do not exist at all. We made some fatal mistakes in our thinking. Utilizing this new theory, you will find that even bizarre structures like Gomez's hamburger are now very easy to understand. Although I totally believe in plasma formations, there are clearly times where there is much more than just electricity and plasma required to explain what we see in space. This is the case in radio galaxy Hercules A. There is clearly actual matter being ejected along the axis of this galaxy from the evidence we see here. I have undertaken hundreds of plasma experiments, and I am convinced that external electricity alone cannot explain the formation we find in Hercules A. So let's take a look at how matter can be ejected by these bowl-shaped magnetic fields.
So now I'm going to show you magnetic ejection utilizing the CERN ball. So this one will shoot these magnets, ordinary magnets, about 25 to 30 feet across the room if I have a large room. I don't have that big a room we're working in right now. So I'm just going to show you what it'll do. So pulls it down here, and I'll just put it in through the bottom, through the hole in the bottom. A little tricky, it doesn't really want to go in there. It's kind of against it. But then you get it to where it's a balance point, where it doesn't take any energy. But once you push it past that balance point,
knowing that all matter has a magnetic component to it, you can now see how these incredibly strong bowl-shaped magnetic fields in space could accelerate matter to nearly the speed of light without requiring external electricity, black holes, dark matter, or even dark energy. By now you can clearly see that the structures we find in space are easily explained by these bowl-shaped magnetic fields without using black holes, dark matter, or dark energy.
And so we're given an explanation for the universe, for man, for micro, for macro, also my pattern, how it can be an energy generating device, and how this could be manipulated in the wrong hands. God bless people.